Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm Taylor. It's never too early to start celebrating the holiday season. And as you can see, it's December 25th, right? Well, not really, because the game we're covering today, Stichtag, has a calendar in it that I've noticed does some magical things. Like right now, it says 25th of December. But if you just change some things around, we can go this quickly all the way back. It's September, so all the way back forward to Halloween, huh? What wonderful technology. So we're going to be using this to sneak into the club one final time. Because as you might tell, it's still August on the channel, but it's kind of September, and we're Benjamin buttoning here, where we're getting younger and younger. And sadly, or not sadly, who knows, Stichtag is not as old of a game as the recent ones we've been covering, like Scott or Koffer Yas. So we are going to have to use that fake ID of sorts to sneak into the club one final time, and then cover Stichtag by Emily and Inka and Marcus Brandt. So let's go back to the club and I'll talk about the hook. Hey, can I come in?
You want to come in here, huh?
Oh, my ID.
How old are you?
Well, I was born on this day, February 1931.
That won't cut it.
Oh, okay. Would this cut it?
Oh, no way. That won't cut it either.
No, okay. How about this? Will this cut it?
That is not gonna cut it, bud.
Oof, okay. Oh, how about this? Would this cut it?
Oh, yeah, that'll cut it.
Okay, great. Right this way. Okay, thanks. Alrighty. Whew. We are sitting at the bar, but sadly underneath the vent. So I'm glad I brought this sweater because it's a little bit cold. But oh, what am I having? You know, I'll just eat these bar nuts actually. Lightly salted whole cashews. Those are bar none, if you ask me. Anyway, the game we're covering today is Stichtag. It is a game where the hook is kind of involving the component that comes in the game that I showed a little bit earlier, but this calendar. So the game itself has 365 different games in it. Kind of a super wacky concept, but essentially there's hundreds of trick-taking games in this one game. So what you'll do is you'll pick a date, either the day you're playing or maybe someone at the table's birthday, and you flip to it. Oh, let's go to my birthday, January 15th, the best birthday ever. And what it's going to have is going to have a goal that players are going to try to attain, like points or how to win, and then a couple of rules, one of them based on the suit, or not the suit, but kind of a symbol that shows up on the different cards. So you're going to be playing one of the many games in the game. I hope that made sense. Let's go to the table and I'll explain a little bit more detail on how to play Stichtag. The deck in Stichtag is made up of 6 suits, and depending on the player count, it ranges from either 0 to 9 in a 3 and 4 player game, or the 10 and the 11 are included in a 5 player game. Here we have the game mostly set up for 3 players, so you're going to deal out 12 cards to each player, no matter the player count, and then you're going to set aside the deck, whatever's left, off to the side. Then players are going to decide what type of game they're going to play. How players pick what game they're playing on is they're going to set the calendar over here, which has different rules or game goals or conditions, to whatever day they want to play. So we could set it to the current day, we could set it to someone's birthday, or you just randomize it to whatever you want. I'm filming this on the 15th of September, so yesterday to you if you're watching it right now. So let's actually go to that day, and I get that this is in German, so it's not the best example here, but I'll explain in English what these mean. So for example, the left side here is going to give kind of a goal for the game. So 0 is where players want to win points, it says everyone plays 3 rounds, and every time you win a trick, you get a point. And at the end of the 3 rounds, whoever has the most points wins. 1 is turning it into a trick avoidance game, where it's the same rules, 3 rounds, every trick's a point, except the person with the fewest was the winner after 3 rounds. There's some other crazier ones, like 2 and 3, where essentially you're trying to hit maybe like 12 points or something, or maybe have certain lives and you lose a life if you mess up. So the scoring is kind of on the left, and so since it's the 15th that we're going with, this is going to be an avoidance game where you don't want points, and you're going to play 3 rounds. Then the 5, or kind of maybe we'll talk about everything else in this spot. In the 1 spot is just special rules, like maybe it's a team game. That's like teamwork there. The specific one we have here is called on-off, where you're going to include this card. Let's see if I can grab it over here. It's this on-off card where anytime a card is played with a switch symbol on the trick, the next trick in moving forward is going to swap to meaning where the low card wins. And then if a trick with a switch is played into that, it'll swap to where the high card wins. And this will just go back and forth. So kind of valuing, high cards and low cards. So the switch just starts on. And then the last thing is this kind of month section here has all these different symbols. And the symbols change up essentially another part of the game, kind of like over here, another rule of the game, where you will be paying attention to the symbol here and how it corresponds in the cards. So if I grab some cards here, the cards each have either, some symbols or no symbols, but as you can see here, sometimes they have multiple symbols. The symbol is sometimes matching the symbol of the month over there. Like on here, like the ghost is for October, or sunny is maybe June, some month in the summer. But so how it works is on the backs, or on the back of the rules, we'll have kind of a breakdown of what symbols have what, and then how they relate to the rules. So like I was saying with the switch, number 5 up there, the on-off, is it triggers whenever a switch is in the trick. And as you can see, the switches are on all the 5s. So the last thing we'll have to learn is what is that leaf symbol, what does it do, and what cards have that leaf symbol. So first we can check, it looks like all the 0s and 2s have the leaf symbol on it. And then looking at the rules, and my impeccable German is going to say that whenever you are counting up the number of tricks you take, you also check for all the leaf symbols on the cards in the tricks that you've taken, and you'll add them and count them as another trick. So say you took a trick and it had 2 cards that had leaves in them, you would have 1 trick plus 2 more for each leaf. So you'd actually have 3 tricks. And again, leaves are bad because right now, since it's the 1 in the tens place, we want to be avoiding tricks. Whew, okay, so all that out of the way, the game is just a must-follow game, and there is a trump in the game, and it is red. So red is trump, unless, some of the wackier rules change it. But so essentially it's a must-follow, pretty standard trick taker where red is trump. Of course, as you can tell, there's the on-off rule this day, to where sometimes highs are the strongest and sometimes lows are the strongest. But let's just jump into a little bit of the gameplay. So maybe this calendar thumbs up here wants no points, and they assume, oof, they've got the strongest card in the game. That's rough. But so maybe they play the lowest trump to get it out of their hand. So again, it's a must-follow game, so that this player over here would have to follow suit with a trump, and then the champagne up at the top is... they're hedging their bets. Maybe they're going to play the 8. So they'd collect this trick, and as you can see, the 2 here has a leaf on it. So this player up here is not only going to get 1 point for the trick, but also another point for having that leaf. So then they would just lead to the next trick. A play like this would continue until all the players have played all their cards, and then you're going to count up the points, and players are going to record that, and then again, since over there said to play 3 rounds, sometimes you might play 4 rounds or maybe sooner, but you would just finish out the number of rounds, and then whoever has the fewest points wins. If there's a tie, it's a shared victory. So that is one of the 365 games that can be played with this calendar kind of system here. And of course, I'm not going to teach you all of them, because that would be wild and wacky. But I might just show you a few more. So I kind of already talked about the scoring over here, where sometimes it's avoidance, sometimes it's not. Let's talk about a few more of the crazy rules that can happen. So blind is where you'll play a card into the trick, and you'll say the suit. So maybe play that purple 0, but you won't say the number. So you'll just say purple. And then the other players have to follow suit. So then this player, they could play this face down. And then if you don't have any purple, you could play whatever you want face down, just say what it is. So that's an interesting mechanism. Let's find some other ones here. This one is, it's where you wish. So if you play a 1 to the trick, you can wish for what you want trump to be moving forward, starting with the next trick. So that's kind of fun. This one is where I think you split your hand up between odd and even cards, and then you put either the odd or the even face down, and then you play trick taking with that odd or even hand, and you can't pick up the other cards until you're done with the first hand. So maybe I'll just do an example here. So if this was the start of the trick, and so you're taking all the odds, right, from your hand. So odd, odd, odd. So then I would have this, right? So then I would play trick taking like this, where, if it was blue, I'd have to play this. Or if it was yellow, I'd have to play this. And I wouldn't be able to play, the blues or the yellows in my odd hand until after I'm done playing all my evens. And then the second you're done playing your evens, you pick up your odd hand and you play odds. So that's kind of an interesting variant for sure. And then let's get some more examples here. 6 is the teamwork variant, where you're going to choose a color and you're going to shuffle it up and you're going to get a partner. So that's always fun. 8 is where if you play the same suit back to back, you can add them together to form a stronger card. This is funny. It's kind of like my game Zip Zap Zop, but essentially if someone plays a 2, you can play a 6, and then if you have another, the 0 is not a good example. If you have another card of the same color, you can play another one, and now I've played, or Champagne has played a 9 instead of just a normal 6. If you don't have that suit, you can't do that though. So that would just be a 1. So that's another fun one. Let's cover some of the symbols, because some of the symbols are interesting. So maybe like March, where if a trick has this explosion symbol, it just gets wiped. It's kind of like the Kraken if you've played Skull King, or the other symbols that I'm blanking on. Oh, the sun one, where if you win a trick with a sun symbol in it, you get sunburned and you're out of the trick. And you just sit there until someone else wins a sunburn trick, and then they get the sunburn card, and then they're out. So it's kind of like Fool or Foppin, where you can just sit there for a bit. And yeah, there's just different symbols. They all do kind of wacky stuff. It's hard to remember all of them, especially because I don't speak German. So sometimes I'll pull a little Google Translate out and learn a little bit and find out what the rules are. But yeah, so that's essentially the game. There are 365 different ones in there, but I hope that gives you a little bit of a gist of how to play. So that is Stichtag. So that is Stichtag. And it's a very, very interesting concept. I think the game itself just kind of sometimes gets away from itself. It's not a bad game by any means. In fact, it's kind of really tough to evaluate this game, really. It's just because it is so many games. I think an obvious comparison is 504, the game by Friedman Freeze, where it was one game that had 504 different board games in it, like a pick up and deliver game or like a Euro game. It just kind of had everything in there, and it was kind of almost more like a system of creating different board games. This Stichtag system kind of is like that, with a little bit more focus than 504. I don't think that's the best comparison, because that one had so many different kind of ingredients that nothing could have kind of stood out, and it didn't make too many good games. Whereas here, I think there are some good games in this package. I think the tough thing is just finding them. Even before I started playing them, I would read some of the rules, and I think I try to cover a lot of them in the how to play. But some of them, like the ones where you are trying to reach 12 points, and if you go past it, you get minus points. I never liked that kind of scoring system. So whenever I played those games, in whatever day we would play, it would kind of just get in the way of whatever the other cool things were, like whatever the January rule or whatever the, playing blind or whatever it may be. So it seems tough that certain combinations just weren't that interesting to me. Whether like blind, where I think it's a cool concept. I think that's how you can do trick taking face down, is where you announce the suit. It's quite clever. But then I do just wonder if it is clever and it would work in a game that was kind of like tailor-made for that mechanic. But the fact that it's just part of an ensemble of mechanics, it kind of just felt to me that it was, I don't want to say half-baked, but kind of like a part of a system that it wasn't fully meant for, if that makes sense. All these ideas are super fantastic, and some that I've seen in other games or other prototypes, or even some of my prototypes, where I love the idea so much that I want to make a whole game around it and kind of emphasize that mechanic and make a game around that mechanic that makes that mechanic shine. So, another one in here is, if you play 2 cards of the same suit, it stacks and it makes it makes that rank additive. So if you play a 4 and a 3 of the same suit, you actually played a 7. So that's in my game, Zip Zap Zop. And it was funny to play this after designing that, because I kind of had that concept. I made a whole game around it, and it's just like such an integral drive to the design to see it in here, but then when it's in here mixed with all these other, like, sometimes you don't want to win, or sometimes you have like those random symbols that are kind of throwing it for a loop, It felt like the mechanic couldn't quite shine. It couldn't quite live up to its potential, maybe is the right word. So it was tough, because I'm someone who loves mechanisms. Just like, why do they work in this game, and what makes a combination of mechanisms like sing, And it was tough, because it was almost like this was a wonderful this is a wonderful ensemble of singers who have never practiced before. And they get up to sing a song, or it's the big choir debut, and they're all just singing past each other, and it just sometimes sounded like a cacophony. Some of these games are just a little bit rough. But again, some of these games were fantastic, so I don't want to lead too overly negative, and I hope I'm not coming across that way, because some of these were super, super fun. I think the times when this game does shine, it does it so very well, and it's really cool to randomly come across a date or play on a certain date where the game just it kind of, like, using that singing analogy, the I don't know singing well enough to complete the analogy. I was gonna say the sound waves. Yeah, that kind of works. The sound waves hit at the same time. Physics, where like the waves hit and the crest makes the crest higher. Yeah, that works. This works. Thank you, physics class. Because sometimes it is like where the crest and the trough of the two waves, like if the mechanics were a wave, they hit and they cancel each other out. But sometimes they do hit and they amplify. This is so bad. You get it. You get the idea. Anyway, sometimes they do help each other. It is interesting, though, because I do wonder if, even when that does happen, it's more like an exception to the rule. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is another good one. It was more like, whoa, this one's actually good. That's mean. I don't mean it that mean. I think Scott's rubbing off on me a little bit. But it's a little bit at odds, if I can talk about the whole system as a flow. So one of them is, either you want tricks. One of them is you don't want tricks. Another one's that whole, 12-point system that I don't quite like. So that's fine. That's a good, base to have. Another one is, a crazy mechanic, right? Like either teammate, the on-off switch thing, things like that. Which is cool, and that's, a game in and of itself, right? But then the deck makeup, I guess maybe they were trying to get for, hey, these are the cards you, watch out for, right? It's like when you play hearts, you're keeping an eye out for the Queen of Spades or any of the hearts, right? But it was tough in a game like this where you'll play a random game, and sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't work. And you almost don't want to commit the mental memory to learning which cards are, important, or which cards are kind of, trigger cards to keep, to be aware of. Because the game could just be bad. So, for example, I was playing this one edition where it has, these explosion marks, right? And those, nullify the trick. And if it nullifies the trick, nothing quite matters. So you kind of have to, or you definitely have to be aware of it, right? And so you're like, okay, so what has explosions on the cards? And so you're trying to keep track of it. And then, yeah, it's simple that it's like all zeros, right? But with the context that like this game could be bad and you'll just want to change things around and play a different game, like you're just going to flip the calendar, it's tough to like commit to mental memory, like, oh, all the zeros are explosions. In this game, I got to really keep track of the zeros. And then if it's a bad game, you're like, okay, I'm just like throwing that out, you know? Because you're on to the next game, you're playing a whole different game. I almost say the best way to play this game is to find either mechanics that sound interesting and play that day, or just play around and just like stumble upon a really good game and then just write that down and keep a note of it and have that be one of the reasons you pull this game out. I think there are hidden gems in here that are super fun. Some of the tough things, though, this is almost going against what I just recommended, but like for example, I tried this method when I first got this game. I was flipping through, I was like, oh, what are some of these mechanisms that would be super cool? And one of them is, I think it's called like odd even, where you take the odds out of your hand and you put them face down, or the evens, I don't know which one it is. But essentially you halve, H-A-L-V-E, your hand, and you play trick taking with part of your hand. And I was like, that is so cool, because once you get out of your hand, you can pick up the other hand and play with that. But all it did was give you, instead of a bigger hand where you can kind of maneuver around, it just gave you two small hands, which were just super limiting. So it's tough to like read a mechanic and think, oh, that's gonna be so cool, and then like set up the game and play it, and then end up being kind of what you don't think. I don't know. This game's a wacky game. It's kind of an enigma on how to play it, because I don't want to recommend it because there are so many maybe meh additions in here, or maybe just meh to me, but like not super strong games. Because what if I recommend this and then someone plays it and they're like, yeah, that wasn't the best game. It's one of those weird things where if I play a game like, again, like Hearts or Schadenfreude, an amazing game, or Trick Taking in black and white, I can play that so much that I know the experience when I recommend it or not recommend it. Whereas this, I have no clue what you're going to get. You probably will play a game that I haven't played. And then another thing is like on a high level, like how do you play test for this, right? I wonder if they played every game. But even at that point, like that isn't like the idea behind this game, right? The design behind this is like a smorgasbord, kind of a kitchen sink type design, which is cool. I love it for that. But I do just wonder if it's almost like Count Up 21, where it's almost more of a more interesting trick-taking design as opposed to like a good game. The production is fantastic though. I love this calendar. It is so much fun, especially just to have it like up. I mean, if it was in English, that would help to everyone I play this with who were English speakers. But it is just fun. There's kind of a whimsy to have it up on the table and be like, this is the day we're playing. Or if you go to someone's birthday and that's like a great game, it happens to be like a really fun one that the whole table loves, that's such a cool feeling. It's like, hey, nice job being born on a good game. I think a small con for me, even though it seems like this video is kind of a bouncing around between pros and cons for sure, is the deck is pretty big too. Like a lot of cards are cut. So it makes, I guess, for another previous complaint where like keeping track of certain things is tough because like a ton of them could just not be in the game. So it's cool. There's a lot of cool concepts in here. I do love some of the rules. I think the system's pretty sound for the most part. I think just when it all comes together, it just feels kind of a little bit random-ish. So it just feels like you're playing a game that got randomly tossed together as opposed to like a well-focused game. So that is Stichtag, and again, I think this is great for someone who loves design or loves to see kind of what you can do with the idea of games and a system, because this is a pretty well-structured system. I think this is a better example than 504. And again, you can find some pretty cool trick-taking games in here. And there's some that probably are amazing that I haven't even found, 365 games. It's a little bit more than this old guy can take. But just be wary that if you do kind of jump in, you're gonna maybe find some stinkers, maybe find some duds. But hopefully that gives you a good sense of this game. check it out if it sounds cool to you, and I'm gonna go leave because I'm very cold. All right, thanks so much for watching. Bye. Oh, and before we go, I actually haven't heard from Scott since that last video. So if anybody knows any whereabouts, he just hasn't been returning my texts or my phone calls. So if anybody's seen him, please email me at taylor@lacroix.com.